Welcome to the Great Girlfriends podcast, where we discuss life, love, laughter, and everything in between. We're your hosts. I'm Sybil Amuti.
And I'm Brandis Daniel.
And before we jump into this week's episode of the podcast, make sure you sign up for our newsletter at
thegreatgirlfriends.com.
And don't forget to leave us an amazing iTunes review.
Yes, that is the payment for listening to this podcast.
I love it. 5 stars all the way. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the Great Girlfriends podcast, where we discuss life, love, laughter, and everything in between. We're your hosts. I'm Sybil Amuti.
And I'm Brandis Daniel. And we have a guest great girlfriend on the line, Miss Tara Lamar.
Hey, Tara.
Hello. AKA my big sister. Yes, ma'am.
How you doing, Tara?
I am good. How are you, Sybil and Brandis?
We chilling, girl. We are chilling.
We're good. We're so good. So excited because great girlfriends that are listening, we did our first ever sister panel at the Great Girlfriends Conference, and which is crazy, Sybil, right? That we hadn't done that before.
I know. I think we were scared our sisters wouldn't participate. Like maybe they would be like, no.
I mean, this was our first time having our sisters on the podcast. I mean, not on the podcast. Our first time having our sisters speak at the conference. But that panel, I think, was one of people's favorite because when you're talking about like great girlfriendships, like usually your first great girlfriends are your sisters. They're your first friends. They're like built-in friends, and you learn so much about friendship from your sisters. And so it was such a treat having Tara on there, who's my oldest sister. As you guys know, I'm a middle child, a proud middle child, and Sybil's sister was on the panel.
Who is one of my elder sisters. I'm a proud youngest. So it was a good mix. And Tara brought so much. Tara and Minthia, I want to say, because I think Minthia blew my mind that day. She really did. But we learned so much more about each other than we ever thought we could know on that panel. And I think we were so busy, the four of us, in our individual sisterhood, right? Because Brandis and her sister, myself and my sister, we're so busy being sisters that we're not really seeing like how much the love and the relationship is transforming. And then we see each other, and there's so many remarkable parts about who we are. I have such a great respect for my sisters, such a great respect for Brandis' sisters. But sometimes our sisters are literally in the middle of things that we don't even know. And we're watching them be superheroes right before our eyes. And so I think, Tara, you really brought that to the forefront that day at the conference.
Oh, wow. Yes. Wow. Absolutely.
You did, because you were sitting up there looking fierce, Tara. The hair was all swooped to the side, and your face was glossed, and you were poised, and so such an eloquent speaker and so gracious and strong, and you were right in the middle of a valley, it seemed, right?
Yes, ma'am, I was. I really was. And I think that's what we do as women. We know how to put it on, right?
Right. Because, I mean,
yes,
you have to be present where you are, but you're also dealing with life. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so we all the time, we're always present where we are, and we want to put our best foot forward. But then there's always life that's happening. And as a woman and as a mom, because you're a mom of 4 children, and, you know, as a sister and as a pastor, and so many titles that you carry, there's always a lot happening. How do you balance being present and then also managing the background?
Oh, my God. How do I balance it? I think simple, just letting everything I've learned how to, first of all, I'm a pastor and I'm a mom. So I have to know how to sometimes just take what I'm going through and put it on pause for a moment to see about somebody else. And I think that's what motherhood is all about. You know, like all the time we have to sacrifice
what we're feeling, what we desire a lot of times. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily disappear, but we have to pause it for a minute just to love those who are around us and those who God has called us to. And our children, of course, are first in that. And so, and our spouses and things like that. So you just learn to do it. It's what you have to do, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's like a certain grace that comes along with the calling. I do believe when you're called to carry so many titles that you are graced by God to manage, what comes along with that, right? Absolutely. And as a pastor, like I've had to go through several things. I've had to go through a divorce. I had to deal with my children's pain in the middle of that. I had to deal with other things that my children were going through. And when people ask me, like, how in the world did you do it? I'm like, honey, I have no idea. Like, just like you said, it is absolutely God's grace, His mercy. I feel like you're right. He gives us grace to do what we're called to do and what we have to do at the moment. And so just been blessed through the entire thing. Has not been easy. But man, on the other side of it, I just feel extremely, extremely blessed and honored that God would even see that I had that in me, because we don't know the strength that we have until we go through things. And so I'm just extremely grateful for what God has done and been in my life and my world.
And the church says amen. I know.
Let the church say amen. Amen.
On that Saturday, we did the Ready, Set, Go workshop, and me and a few ladies got there early, and they were kind of downloading and giving all the things that they loved about it. And one of the women, with tears in her eyes, said, I needed to hear what your sister said on the panel about her son. She said, I realized that after that, I could have loved my son differently. I think some things would have turned out differently if I had approached those situations in a different way, because I've been so busy pushing him to be what I wanted him to be and to do what I think he should be doing, that I haven't loved him through it in the right way. Not that she didn't love him, but she was like, you open her eyes to something. And everywhere I go in New York, where there's people from the Great Girlfriends Conference, they're like, oh my God, what your sister said. Oh my God. And so there are so many great girlfriends who listen to this podcast that didn't get to hear it. And I think it could be a game changer and a life changer for so many of our great girlfriends around the world. So if you would, we would love for you to just share that.
Okay. What I shared was, my son had a situation that got him in a lot of trouble at school, and it was a situation I had never gone through before. I've had 3 children. My daughter's almost 30 years old, and I had never been through anything like it before. And so it was disappointing, to say the least. It was hurtful. It made me extremely angry. And, but I was challenged to show him love, and versus what I would have normally done. So my initial reaction was, I was shocked. I got a call from the principal. I was extremely shocked at what he said my child had done. And I was hurt and I was angry. Anger is that secondary emotion, like after we're disappointed or hurt. I was very angry with him and didn't understand. And so I wanted to respond in anger. And so before I responded in anger, though, I called 2 people. One is a very dear friend of mine. And I was advised to, at this moment, Tara, he does not need all this rebuke and anger. What he needs is education and love. He needs somebody to understand where he is. And then, Brenda, I called you and you prayed with me and you were like, Tara, what if what he received when he walked through the door was love versus rebuke? And I'm like, what? And so, yes, like, seriously, And so I was so used to living a life where anger had been my response until this was a challenge for me, because God had already done so much in my life and so much healing.
And so love meant so much to me, and my children's healing meant so much to me until I listened. So when he got in the house, because he had to drive home from school, they were basically kicking him out for the rest of the year. So when he got home, he didn't get what he expected. He knows his mother, so he expected me to lay him out, right? And so I did not do that. What he received was I sat down, I allowed him to explain himself, and then I responded. Number one, I took responsibility for the part that I felt was my responsibility, because I had been advised over and over that there were some things I needed to sit down and talk to my son about, and I had not done those things out of my own fear, out of my own insecurity. I had to say, hey, some of this, I understand that I should have done something different. I was advised to talk to you. I wish I had done it sooner, and let's figure out how to get through this. I let him tell me what happened, explain kind of his side of it. And I'm glad I did, because even though he had done what he had done, he had gone to adults to tell them that he had done it. So he had remorse afterwards. If I had responded in anger, I wouldn't have had a chance to say, hey, this is a child who had done something, but they were already remorseful before anybody ever found out. And so I got to hear his heart on it. And then and he was very, very hurt behind it. And so after we walked through the situation, there was a morning. I mean, there were mornings that I would get up and it was almost like I was madder the next day than the first day, and the third day worse than the second. And so I had a friend that kept saying, well, let me take you walking. Let me, and Tara, it's almost like your anger is getting worse. And I think as parents, sometimes our anger is not even about the child anymore. It's about our own humiliation. And, it becomes about us, and we don't realize it. And so I began to feel humiliated. And, I've raised my children differently from this. And what are people thinking? You go through all of that. But I had to keep it about my son and not make it about me or what I was feeling. I needed to deal with what he was feeling. And so, there was a morning, maybe about 5 days later, because he was at my house. I was waking up every morning like, why is this kid at my house and other children are at school? Like, that's what was making me mad. And so anyway, he was there. And God woke me up. He said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go in there and tell your son every reason you're proud of him in the middle of this. And I was like, seriously? And so God began to show me the things that I should be proud of in the middle of it. And so I went in and I explained to him, I said, hey, this is a bad thing, and I hate that this happened. And I'm not excited about it at all, but I am very proud of you for several reasons. And one of the reasons was I'm proud of you for, number one, recognizing that you had made a mistake and going to adults about it before I even knew. I'm very proud of you for that. I'm very proud of you for being more concerned about the other people involved than you have been about yourself. I watched my son's heart towards the other people that were involved, and he seemed to be more worried about them than he was even himself. So I was very proud of him for thinking about other people. Then I was very proud of him because he went to have a conversation with his father, who he had kind of been estranged from. He felt like he needed to talk to him, and I felt like that took a lot of courage. And so I was like, I'm very proud of you for doing that. And then he wrote a letter to adults that he felt like it had offended. And I thought that was very mature. And I said, I'm so proud of you for doing that and taking that step. He had done so many things that nobody asked him to do in the middle of this that just blessed my heart. And so God allowed me to see it from a different perspective that, yes, I've done a bad thing, but sometimes it's the way that we recover. It's our remorse on the back end. It's our, I talked about it at the conference. I said he responded like David. Like David did something that was very sinful against God, but God called him a man after his own heart because it was what David did after he sinned that, that God loved about him. And I think God knows that all of us have flaws, but it's the way that we respond after. Do you repent after? Do you apologize after? What is your heart after? And so his heart of humility just blessed me. And I have been asking God for something. I have been asking God to connect me and my son in a way. I felt like we were missing a certain connection. And as interesting as it is, I feel like this is a thing that has connected us in a way that I never could have imagined, because we were forced into conversations that I wasn't comfortable having before. And so, and I think he learned to trust me. And because love is not demonstrated on our best day. Love is really demonstrated on our worst day. You know, even when you ask people why they love God, it's like, because he loved me when I was a dirty, rich sinner. You know, there's nothing I could have done to deserve his love. And I think anybody can love you when you're doing wonderful. It's how we love people when they're at the bottom and when they're at their worst. And so God allowed me to give my son a lot of what I wish people had given me at the worst times in my life, you know, because I was the teen mom, and I was the one that disappointed people, and I was the one that messed up. And I think, Brandis, I think you said that to me, like, what if you gave him the response when he walked through the door that you wish you had received, you know, and how much difference would that have made in your life? And so I was grateful for the people God gave me to speak to before he got there, and I was grateful for the time it took him to get there to, you know, because I was hot. And so, so I'm just appreciative.
Yeah.
I love this so much, Tara, because it, like, there's nothing that really can transform any of us outside of love. Like, love does it every single time. Well, I would say in the way that love does. How about that? But how did you get to this point? Because even though you may have heard from, you know, different people and consider this way, there was a time then that no matter what anybody said, you would have done it differently. Like, how did you get here? You know that for sure, don't you? Girl, look. And so, yeah, you're right. There was a time there was nothing anybody could have told me. Like, once I was mad, that was it. And so, but I think for me, over the last 3 or 4 years, God has really taken me through a healing process. And he has done so much healing in my heart until when it came to loving my son, it didn't really matter what people thought about me. You know, God has healed me from so much of that, you know, and just taken me through a healing process from a lot of my own deep-rooted issues. And so, and I tell everybody, it is so important for us as parents to heal, because that's the only way we can help our children heal. So many times we're parenting out of our own wounds and our own hurts and our own hang-ups, and we don't even realize we're doing it. And so a lot of times we're angry about something that's going on with our child because, quite frankly, it reminds us of something that went on with us, or, you know, something that happened, and we're responding in the only way that we know. And so I think a lot of times we have to heal from the things that happened to us. And so I spent the last 3 or 4 years healing from a lot of the things that had happened to me, healing from a lot of the ways that I have been dealt with, healing from just a lot of hurt. And so when this situation came, I was dealing with just that situation and not, you know, what other situations it reminded me of or what it made me feel like from before. So because I had done a lot of healing, I could just deal with just this situation alone.
You know, so many times, yeah, you did. You did. Okay. So many times, I think you said something very important earlier about not really wanting to discuss certain things because they were just uncomfortable for you. But most of the time, what I've learned is the uncomfortable conversations, if not had, will manifest themselves some way in my life that force us to a table, whether we want to be there or not. So most of the time, the uncomfortable conversations are the essential ones. And it's really hard. I'm learning now, having a middle schooler, you know, and not even just the middle schooler, the little one too. I'm just learning that if I don't have the conversations, they're going to be had whether I like it or not by someone, you know, that I may not even approve of. How did you, and as a mom, because you've gone through it before, you know, with your other children, how do you make the decision to step into an uncomfortable conversation and make it palatable so that so that, it becomes, you can sort of disarm, you can connect, love can be at the center. You don't have to run from it. How did you get there?
I think this conversation, Sybil, I was forced into. But one of the things I learned from it, and you're right, my son was talking to adults anyway. And so it hurt me so bad that my son had to go have conversations with grown people. And to be honest, one of them was a woman, and he could have been having this conversation with his mother. And so I think what we have to address is, what am I afraid of? This is my child. So what am I afraid of in this conversation? And I think as we're talking about love, I think love needs to be our motivation. The reason I'm talking to my son or my daughter is because I love them. And I need to, even if I have to explain that when I sit down, hey, I love you. This is why we're having this conversation. I've seen some things, or I've made some mistakes, and here's what I'm trying to prevent for you. If you have to, disclaim it, just give that and say, this is what I wish I had done, Sybil. I wish I had just sat down with my son and say, hey, this is a very uncomfortable situation for me. Quite frankly, I feel like a man should be having it with you, but this is where we are. And I wish I had just done that and sacrificed what I felt and my discomfort for my child's safety and for his protection. So I think we have to go in and sacrifice. Again, as moms, we have to sacrifice ourselves, our feelings, our discomfort for the sake and the well-being of our children. And so that's what I wish I had done in this situation. I feel like I've done it a lot, especially with my daughters. But when you're dealing with sons, it feels a little different, but you have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like comfort almost seems like an enemy to communication sometimes. The comfortable conversations are what you're doing tonight, what we eating for dinner. The uncomfortable stuff is the stuff that's going to keep the family tight, it's the stuff that we, and I really do. I'm learning, the more I adult, the more I recognize that the stronger relationships are the ones where we press through the uncomfortable and where we approach the uncomfortable and where we tackle it and make it easy and make it, make it something that's not so intimidating. But I really feel like comfort is really the enemy to growth. I really do believe that.
So good.
I really do.
That's so good. I agree. And so I just wish I had taken the risk, but we've done it. I mean, we've had plenty of conversations at this point and in a very good place. I feel like, though it was a horrible thing at the moment, I feel like it's probably one of the best things that have happened for he and I as far as our relationship. And so I just encourage people to love through it. Like, take your children's worst moments and let God use them for you and not against you, And I think, Brandis, you mentioned to me Sarah Jakes' book and how her parents handled her in the middle of it. And I'm reading the book now, and it's just beautiful, the love that they showed her. And, really sacrificed their reputation and didn't worry about their reputation. They were concerned about their daughter. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful story. And I had not read it before now, but I'm reading it now. And I'm just grateful to say that I feel like my son will have a very similar story to hers because of this.
Wow.
Grateful.
Yeah. I love it, Tara. There's so many layers to this because I'm like, for you to have gotten to this point, even after, because you mentioned divorce, and there are women who are listening to this, and just really quick, because I know you have to go in a minute, but women who are listening to this who are newly divorced and who might be saying, how can I even love my child like that when, quite honestly, like, I'm just hurting. Like, I can't even, so when their child does something, it's more of an irritation because is this on top of the hurt that I'm already feeling from this relationship? And I feel like that takes some serious healing. Can you give us some practical, maybe 3 practical things that you did to heal?
Number one, my number one thing would probably be forgiveness. Oh my God, it has taken tons and tons of forgiveness because the children are hurt too. They're wounded too. Another thing that I did was I really, really, really focused on the fact that I wasn't the only one hurting, that my children were as well. I think sometimes we get so caught up in our hurt until we miss the fact that our children are crushed by this situation. And so I focused a lot on my children's healing and a lot of counseling. Forgiveness would be number one. Healing intentionally, meaning be very, very honest about what you feel. I think a lot of times people say, oh, I'm fine. I think you have to be very, very honest about today's not a good day. I'm hurting today, and let yourself feel it and be very normal. I also feel like I had a support system. You have to have people around you that you can just cry out to and be honest with, because some days are better than others. So you almost feel like, oh my God, I was so good yesterday, And I just think be honest about those days. Allow yourself to have them. Allow yourself to feel and be intentional about your healing. I went through a lot of counseling, did a lot of forgiveness, and then I did a lot of rediscovery as to who I was before I even got married, or what are the things I love? What are the things that Tara wants to do or always wanted to do and have not done? And I really began to just give myself the things that I felt like I had not given myself. I began to vacation and go to dinner and just love on me. I feel like spend some of that time rather than being depressed and bitter. Figure out what you love to do. Try some things out. Enjoy yourself. Take yourself out. And so I really did a lot of that, and it kind of pulled me out. And then focus on your future. What does my future look like? Hey, this has happened. What does my tomorrow look like? And so as I healed from the pain of what had happened, I also really, really focused forward on what was in front of me and just really began to focus a lot on that. And it has, my world has, it's beautiful.
That sounded real good.
It's beautiful. It takes time.
Wow.
Give yourself time. Be patient with yourself. Yes, but it's beautiful.
That's so good.
That's so awesome.
That is so good.
That is so awesome.
I love that, because there are some people who've gone through these things and feel like they're not deserving of the beautiful world that you're talking about. And what you have reminded me, Tara, it doesn't matter what you've done or what has been done to you. If you open up yourself to forgiveness, the opportunity for the healing is available. And with that healing comes this other side of life that is bigger and better and greater than anything you can imagine. But you have to open yourself up to it and be willing to forgive yourself and forgive, the predators in your life and the people that have done things that you felt were unforgivable. Those are the things we got to forgive. The stuff that's like, girl, you don't know what they did. No, that's the stuff that you got to put on a table for forgiveness and really heal through, because to hear you today and to hear you a few years ago, it's like just such a blessing. It's so good. It's just amazing. Amazing.
Yes. And I've been telling people, listen, unforgiveness is like we're holding people in debt. You know what I mean? And so and we're trying to collect on that debt. And the Word of God tells us, listen, if you want to be forgiving your debts, you need to forgive people their debt. And so we live in unforgiveness, feeling like somebody owes us something. And so, and as long as I owe you, as long as everybody owes you, you always live in this state of poverty. Like, you're always living in a deficit. And so once I forgive, I set myself, I tell them that forgiveness takes a person's debt to zero. We see many places in the scripture where it says that a person's debt was forgiven. And so when we forgive people's debt, I no longer live like everybody owes me. If everybody owes me, I always feel broke or broken. And when you forgive people, it brings you back to a place of wholeness. They no longer own these parts of you, And so, because if everybody owns a part of you, if everybody owes you something, you never get to a place of real joy, And so I don't really care what people did or what I felt like they owed. At this point, nobody owes me anything, And when you live like nobody owes me anything from yesterday, you can move into tomorrow in a very, very healthy way. And so that's why I feel like forgiveness is so important. And I feel like the Word of God is very, very clear on we have to forgive the debts that people owe us. We have to forgive them, bring them to zero. Yeah.
Bring them to zero. I love it.
Zero. You owe me nothing. You owe me nothing. Yeah.
Well, Tara, how can our great girlfriends get in touch with you? They're going to want to know more. So give them all the deets.
Well, I am Tara Lamar on everything. I'm Tara Lamar on Facebook. I'm Tara Lamar on Instagram. And my website is taralamar.com. And I'm getting ready to release a program, Happiness After Heartbreak is what it's going to be called. And it's for women who have gone through deep heartbreak and how to heal and how to walk through that. And also a lot of things on forgiveness and how to forgive. I think one of the things people have been very, very interested in when I release stuff is forgiveness. People struggle with forgiveness, but I'm telling you, forgiveness has changed the game in my life. It brings so much favor. It's almost like I can't think about it now. It's like God does it. It's just a beautiful, beautiful life. It really is. And I want people to experience it. So TaraLamar.com, Tara Lamar on everything.
We could not end this podcast without thanking our amazing husbands.
Yes, thank you, Kwaku.
And thank you so much, Rich Daniel.
And our beautiful children. Thank you, Sam and Dylan.
And thank you, Miss Sky Daniel.
And thank you to all of you great girlfriends for trusting us as your go-to source for everything life, love, and laughter.
You can check us out on our social, on Instagram,
The Great Girlfriends,
on Twitter,
_Great GFS,
and on Facebook,
The Great Girlfriends.
And please make sure that you join our Facebook group, which is over 16,000 women strong.
Absolutely. And make sure you listen every single Wednesday on iTunes, Spotify, Podcast Bean, Podcast Republic, Google Play, and every other podcasting service.
Absolutely.
Be sure to post your questions, share with your friends, keep listening, and keep being a great girlfriend. I'm Sybil.
And I'm Brandon.
And we're signing off.
Peace.
Peace.